Everyone out there, welcome back to Only You.
Hey everybody.
Only You is a podcast made to talk about the decision to have an only child, the stigma surrounding it, and stories and anecdotes from people who've lived it. I'm Jess.
I'm Pierce.
And we're back for episode 3.
Here we are.
How's it feel?
It feels so good.
Feels good, right?
It feels amazing.
We're here.
We're here. We have released our first 2 episodes. We're available on most streaming platforms, and we've gotten a really good amount of downloads. It far exceeds our expectations. Starting this, we really just hope that we would help a handful of people. And we've been getting your emails, your DMs, your messages, everything.
And it kind of makes us feel a little bit more validated in the fact that there are people out there who want to talk about this. There are people out there who want to share their stories and who want to create a community of people who are going through the same thing. So welcome. Hi.
Hi. That's what it's all about. Just creating a community, making you feel like you're not alone.
Because you're not.
You got some buds out there.
Yeah, you sure do. So today's episode is going to talk about mental health and why it's such a crucial element to the decision of whether or not to keep having more kids.
Very crucial. Super important.
There are tons of people out there whose pregnancies, labors, newborn phases didn't go how they hoped they would or how they planned they would. And that can really be a deciding factor in if you want to do the whole thing again. For some people, they're just ready to give it another shot and it's not as important or it didn't take as much of a toll on their mental health. And that's great.
That's fantastic.
But what we're learning from our emails is that there's actually a good amount of you whose pregnancy, labor, or newborn phase does guide your decision and did really stick with you and took a really long time for you to kind of heal from.
And you're listening to a couple of parents that went through the very same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't we start talking about the pregnancy, the stress, the anxiety that comes with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfect place to start because for some people who have already been pregnant, even the idea of becoming pregnant again can give them anxiety. And even if they had a picture-perfect pregnancy, they can still feel that way.
That's a tongue twister. Picture-perfect pregnancy. Picture-perfect pregnancy.
Well, we can't start a podcast called Picture-Perfect Pregnancy because I did not have one.
That might be like a good warm-up before we start recording. Picture-perfect pregnancy.
Well, I was also going to say, somebody wrote to me, and I can't remember which email it was or if it was a message or a comment, but they said, the idea of being one and done is encouraging me to start a family at all.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting. Like the pressure and the anxiety for women to be pregnant and how that's going to go for them is so real that some people don't even know if they want to be parents at all because they're so worried about the pregnancy and the delivery.
Right.
Which is so interesting. I definitely know people in my own life who haven't taken the leap to parenthood simply because they're afraid or nervous or anxious about pregnancy and labor.
So many things to be anxious about.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a pregnancy, there are so many things to worry about, boxes to check, milestones,
ultrasounds.
Ultrasounds is my baby measuring, at the right percentile. I mean, we could go on and on, but maybe the idea of being one and done can maybe help mothers cope a little bit by kind of predetermining, like, yeah, I'm one and done. I just have to do this once, and I have a perfect little baby. I don't have to, if they've been feeling pressure from their partner or family or friends, well, as soon as you get this one over with, you're going to start trying for number 2, right?
It's true. It's crazy the people who start pushing you for number 2 before you've even given birth to the first one is insane.
Yeah.
People want you to tell them your exact timeline. It's nuts. And to be fair, as far as pregnancy goes, I actually did have a pretty good one. There were certain points in my pregnancy where I was even talking about being a surrogate someday.
Right.
Because it was really easy for us to get pregnant.
Yep.
And fortunately, I didn't have to deal with any loss it wasn't until closer to the end where I developed preeclampsia that I
Yeah.
realized how fucking scary pregnancy is.
Yeah, it was a real wake-up call.
Yeah.
Everything was going swimmingly, and then bam.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, we found out, everything was going great, not a care in the world, and then all in one day, we found out preeclampsia, and you're delivering this baby.
Yeah. And she's not even in the first percentile. And even before the preeclampsia, I'm an anxious person. I have anxiety disorder. So pregnancy did come with its fair share of fears for me. I remember early on, before we even heard the heartbeat, I had this web page open on my phone that gives you the percentage likelihood of miscarriage. You type in the day you conceived, the day your last period, whatever it was, and it tells you by the day how likely it is that you could lose the child. And I checked it every single day, maybe multiple times a day.
That's almost, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but that seems almost borderline OCD.
Yeah, it was very obsessive.
So I know I said the pregnancy went swimmingly, but all throughout the course of it, we were pretty anxious. I think both of us are just kind of nervous wrecks sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show even an easy pregnancy can take a huge toll on your mental health.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't think I was really anticipating when I became pregnant, just how nervous I would be the entire time. And it's a huge factor in my decision not to try for a second, because knowing what I know now about preeclampsia and the things that can go wrong, if I were to become pregnant again, I'd be a mess.
Right.
I don't think that I would be a very good parent to Penny or wife to you. I would be pretty consumed with my fear. And that's a huge reason why I'm not trying again.
Well, we've talked about the pregnancy and everything that comes with that, but then there's also the labor and delivery, and that's a whole new deck of cards. There are a lot more things to worry about with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's the hospital tours and the choosing a midwife and trying to decide, medicated or natural, just trying to make all the right decisions in a situation that is so volatile and insane and unpredictable.
And that's great that you have your own little birth plan, but guess what? That might just be taken right out from under your feet.
From what I understand, it almost always is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got an email from someone with a picture-perfect pregnancy, perfect labor, and pretty easy delivery, who still said, not doing that again.
Nope, I'm
thanks.
good.
Thanks, but no thanks.
That was pretty awful.
And it all circles back to the fact that if you didn't enjoy pregnancy and labor and delivery, and you are afraid or anxious or just not of the mind to repeat it, that is enough. That's a good place to stop.
Absolutely.
You don't have to say much more than that. I really believe that mental health should be held to the highest regard.
Mental health matters.
Mental health does matter a lot. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the newborn phase.
Yeah, that comes next, huh?
So yeah, there's pregnancy, terrifying. There's labor and delivery, horrifyingly painful.
You might have PTSD.
Me, personally?
No.
Well.
I just meant that's a whole nother thing to deal with, with a difficult pregnancy and labor and delivery.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you've been sort of planning your ideal situation and then it doesn't go the way you hoped it would.
Right.
There can definitely be some anger and resentment manifested there.
Sure.
And PTSD is a very real thing. And then, you come to the newborn phase. And I felt a huge amount of community and commiseration when we started getting emails from people whose babies had health issues, because it's something I don't hear talked about a lot in relation to being one and done.
Mm-hmm.
People really seem to suffer in silence about that, about the newborn phase when there are health issues there. And you don't really hear about it very much when people decide not to keep going because of that. And I can tell you right now, from personal experience, seeing your newborn suffer might be the most excruciating pain a person can ever feel, because you're freshly a parent. You still have all those hormones running through you from labor, from delivery, from pregnancy. You're just meeting this human for the first time. and you have to see them in pain.
Right.
It's like nothing I ever imagined. And it's your introduction into parenthood. It's a lot.
That is a lot. That's the most. So thank you, all our listeners for sharing that with us. We can relate to that. We hear you.
We found a lot of comfort in your stories.
Yeah.
And I do want to take a second to say that as of this recording, it's October 2020, and October is National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And for those of you out there who have suffered through pregnancy or infant loss, we just want to say that we're here to listen if you ever want to share with us.
Yeah.
Or honestly, we just want to say we're here.
Yeah.
We hear you. We see you.
It's not easy to talk about.
Mm-mm.
And if you have the courage to write in, we would very much appreciate that. We're here. Imagine having to revisit that anytime someone asks you, so just the one?
Yeah.
When's number 2 coming?
Right.
And you say, well, I'm thinking about sticking with 1. Oh, how come?
Right.
Well,
we heard that in an email, I think in episode 2, where the person was an only child and their parents had struggled with miscarriages.
Yeah.
Imagine their anxiety. Imagine being asked that because her parents tried before and after her.
Yep. So now you have this newborn. You get him home. How much are you sleeping?
Yeah. I mean, talk about a detriment to your mental health.
Oh my gosh.
Not sleeping is the worst. I think, I don't know. It's a weird vibe in your house because you have people coming in and out all day, visiting the baby. You haven't slept. You're kind of just like getting to know your partner as a parent.
Yeah.
You're kind of getting reacquainted with them in that way. You're probably healing. I remember, full disclosure, this is going to be a little gross.
Oh, boy.
But our bathroom was like a war zone with all the postpartum stuff I had in there. Like, I remember just putting it all in the bathtub so that when everyone came over, we have one bathroom. My, like, hidden...
Threw everything in there, closed the curtains.
Yeah. Like... What do they call that area that, like, you hide in during a war?
Like a bunker? Or no?
Like
a trench.
Yeah, that was the trenches.
Yeah.
The bathtub was my trenches. So you have all these people coming over. They're bringing weird food that you're not used to eating. You don't really feel like company all the time because you're just not sleeping and you're scared and you're feeling really weird and vulnerable and surreal. Again,
whether you had an easy pregnancy, easy delivery, or you were in the NICU like us for a while, just, you kind of want some space when you come home.
Yeah, absolutely. So that whole period, that whole, like, I don't know, they say that you kind of turn a corner at 6 weeks. So let's just call the brand new newborn phase 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That whole period is just surreal. That was how I used to describe it to people. It's surreal. It's like everything I ever dreamed of and wanted, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like a waking nightmare. It's fucking scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying for sure.
Every little thing that she does, I feel like I have to Google or call a nurse about, like nobody ever told me that newborns' eyes kind of jitter.
Yeah.
Like remember when she used to look around the room and her eyes would shake and we were like, okay.
I feel like I might have blacked that out. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something I remember us being hyper focused on. And for parents who have spent time in the NICU, my therapist told me, we do a thing that is called hypervigilance, where every little thing that your baby is doing, because you have to be their advocate and you have to be their healthcare team and their parent, you're watching.
Yep.
You're wondering, is this something to call the doctor about? Is this something to go to the ER about? Yeah. And those things crossed our mind. I think there was at one point, Penny, her eyes were watering too much. Yeah. We were like, and she wasn't crying, but her eyes were just, or like maybe it was just one eye. So it was a blocked tear duct, which is apparently very common.
It just works itself out.
But I had convinced myself that maybe she got scratched or something.
Right.
Or she scratched her own, because they have those razor sharp fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, looking back on these memories of that six-week period, I feel terror. I feel like I'm absolute negative.
I'm sweating a little bit right now. This is tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all that to say, you can be one and done for any reason you want, but especially if you have like a difficult pregnancy, fuck all that, pressure to have another kid. It's your call. It's your decision.
It's your mental health.
You gotta take care of your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're in the position to be raising a child, I think a really wonderful thing that you could teach them is that your mental health matters.
Yeah.
Being able to say, hey, mom needs a second to collect herself. Mom needs a second to just take a breather for my own mental health.
Is this what you told Penny at 6 weeks old? Listen.
Honestly, maybe. Because like when they're in that period where they're crying for absolutely no reason,
yeah,
sometimes you do just have to set them down in a safe space and walk away.
You haven't slept in days.
Yeah. And maybe I did. I might have just been like,
look,
yo, I'm going to walk away from you.
I gotta go.
I'll never leave you. You're everything to me. But at this moment, at this second, I'm going to walk into the next room.
I'm going to go get your dad. I'm going to go wake his ass up.
Well, you weren't there,
Oh.
Not in a bad way, but
he wasn't around.
Yeah. You weren't there because you were working. Because sometimes the labor falls onto one parent when the other parent's working. So it is actually a really isolating experience also.
And I blame the government.
Oh, yeah. I
mean,
blame the government for almost everything.
Our European, listeners out there, you probably... Maybe you are aware. Everyone's maybe aware of how shitty our health care system is,
Yeah.
but...
European listeners, have you considered adopting us?
Yeah.
We could really use a good
Email
home.
us. Yeah. Let's talk. So, I think just this last year, dads, their paternity leave didn't have to be paid. In fact, it was very uncommon for companies to give you...
Well, you're talking about Washington State. In the U.S. in general, it's not a law that dads get it.
Yeah, just in Washington State.
In Washington State, the first year that dads and moms, got paid family leave was 2019.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was 2020.
I think it was passed in 2019. It came into effect in 2020, but in our case, and probably some others, if you had your child in 2019, you were eligible.
You could take it in 2020,
You could take it like after. Yeah.
So Pierce wasn't able to take it in August 2019 when Penny was born, but he was able to take it later in 2020.
Yeah.
When she was a little older, which was actually really fun because we had dad home and she was more of like a
It
roly-poly,
was super cool,
silly baby.
Yeah.
But those long newborn days, I was flying solo a lot.
Right. And that's, to clarify, that's after we came home from the NICU. Right after she was born, I actually was fortunate enough. My company gave me a month off, unpaid, of course, but that whole month we spent it in the hospital. So that was kind of my second chance in 2020, my second chance at paternity leave.
Yeah,
Take
and
two.
I wouldn't give that up for anything. It was wonderful. But for a lot of moms, I say moms because it is more common that the mothers stay home, but for dads too.
Yeah.
It can be an extremely isolating experience to be at home with a newborn, and that can contribute to postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. When you don't have a community or a support system there with you every day, it can be really draining. And this episode is really just trying to take the stigma away from talking about that.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Take care of your mental health. Treat yourself. Go wake up dad or mom and say, hey, take care of this little dude.
Totally.
So,
I think I asked Pierce to come home from work a couple of times.
Oh my, a couple times?
Yeah.
It was often.
Well, I asked you often, but did you actually come home often?
Wow, this is really just portraying me as like, okay, baby born. Okay,
Well,
baby's born. I'm going to work.
You didn't have a choice.
I know.
I mean,
exactly.
It's not you. It's just that the U.S. doesn't give you that option.
All right. So take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Mental health is important. It matters.
Mm-hmm. I think the more we talk about this kind of stuff, the less stigmatized it will become.
Mm-hmm.
So consider this a place to openly talk about it.
Yeah.
Because we want to hear it, we want to discuss it, and we want it to be seen as important. Because as we've covered in past episodes, the decision to have an only child is met with people telling you it's selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're telling them, I'm not going to have another one because my mental health matters, we want you to know that that's the opposite of selfish.
That is not selfish.
It's one of the most selfless things you can do, to do that kind of work on behalf of your children.
Yeah.
To say, I'm going to be the kind of person who takes their own mental health seriously, who works on themselves, and who wants to be as happy as I can be for the sake of my child and my marriage.
Yeah.
Or relationship, if it's more of a partnership.
Yeah.
Or if you're a single parent, just doing it for yourself, because there is nothing wrong with that either.
It's really a bigger picture thing.
I definitely think that's an amazing thing to teach your children. And I'm really firm in my belief that a child will be just as well off coming from an only child household as they would a household with siblings, if the parents are prioritizing their own self-care and their own mental health and doing what it takes to be a good influence on them.
Yeah, it's never going to be easy to make that assessment, Am I mentally healthy, for another kid? Yeah, it's a tough decision, What I'm trying to say is just take your mental health into consideration. That should be very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Prioritize it.
Yeah. So, on that note, I think this is a good time to read some emails.
I agree. I think this is a great time.
We got a couple.
And we want to say again, thank you all so much for emailing in. We might not get to you this episode, but we have them saved for future episodes.
Yeah.
Because we're going to try to have sort of a general theme on our episodes. In fact, this is a good time to mention that our next episode, we think we're actually going to talk a little bit about creating a community with your peers and with your family to give your child more of a communal experience. So we're going to call it The Family You Choose.
Right.
We're going to talk about people who have really long-lasting friendships that they bring into their kids' lives, who facilitate friendships for their children's sake, and who teach their kids how to maintain really great friendships. I got an email from a person who told me as an only child growing up, she desperately wanted to be an aunt and didn't think she would get the chance. And then was able to become an aunt to all of her best friend's children.
Yeah.
And the way she tells that story is just really beautiful. So if you have thoughts on that or stories related to that, that's going to be our topic next week. So email in onlyyoupod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest negative things you hear about when it comes to being an only child. Well, you don't have any siblings, you don't have a family, a big family, but it's about the family you choose.
Exactly.
Not the family you've been given.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriends are as close to me as my sisters are. And that's neither a slight on my sisters or my girlfriends. It's a positive thing all around. I love them all.
All right. We've given them enough of the next episode.
Okay, let's stick to where we're at.
All right.
So this first email comes from Esther. She says, "Hi, I'm Esther. I'm 24 years old with a 1.5-year-old. I absolutely love that I found your podcast. I hate the guilt people try to make you have for only having one by choice. I'm a co-sleeping mom and a breastfeeding mom, and so with two, that would get a little difficult. We only have a king-size bed." Only.
Wow. Only a king-size bed.
And already my 1.5-year-old takes up the entire bed by herself. That's funny.
I'm very jealous of the king-size bed.
Here are my reasons for being one and done. Terrible morning sickness. I ended up in hospital 5 times for fluids while in the first trimester because I would puke every 5 minutes all day.
Wow.
I then was on Zofran for my whole first trimester, and that cut it down to 1 and 2 times a day, but still.
I don't know what you're complaining about 1-2 times. It's a piece of cake. No, I'm joking.
Rich coming from you.
I'm joking.
Morning sickness aside, I was never not sick during pregnancy with something. I did a natural labor, and let me tell you, never again. Sorry, trigger warning for labor grossness. She ripped me up and down, and terrible hemorrhoids took her forever to heal. Hey, not to laugh at you, sorry, Esther. That sounds awful.
We're not censoring anything in this podcast. We feel you.
My mental health has always been weak. Postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety is a bitch. I love you for saying that, Esther. Thank you. My child woke up every 45 minutes every day until she was 15 months old. Holy shit. My husband has a life-risking job, so he had to sleep, and I was the night waker upper. And then she does the little emoji that's sort of like that little like that funny face guy.
I'm smiling through the pain.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Yeah. Welcome to the emoji cast, everyone. I breastfed, struggled with low supply, tongue and lip tie, nipple shield, mastitis 2 times. Whew. That sounds awful. I pretty much went bald postpartum. These are all in caps. Teething, SIDS paranoia, sleep regressions. SIDS paranoia is a real one, actually.
Oh my gosh.
That one kind of goes hand in hand with that postpartum anxiety. I was so scared of SIDS. That's something that's so unbelievably out of your control, and there's so little you can do about it. I think for me, what helped was just practicing super, super safe sleep all the time.
Yep.
Always, alone on her back in the crib. And I would beat myself up if I at all went against those. Like if I left the binky that was like what is that little guy called? Dougie? He was a Wubbanub. So it was a binky that had a little stuffed animal attached with kind of bean bag in it. And if I left that in there with her, I would just beat myself up about it. Yeah. I thought, well, this is it. This is why I don't deserve to be a mom. This is why I'm just the worst mom ever.
I can't even recall how many times we've woken her up from, when it takes you, an hour to get them down, and you finally get them down and you get out of the room, and then you look at the baby monitor and you think, is she okay? What's wrong? Why
she's sleeping too soundly.
Why is her hand facing up and the other one is facing down? I need to go in there. And you go in and you wake her up just because you can't even deal with the anxiety. And that was us.
That definitely. Was absolutely us. It still feels like me a little bit, but I'm much, much better now. The next one says, now we are in the terrible twos. And then she did 2 of the sort of like guy. But the most important thing is, I don't ever want to love anyone else the way I love her. I don't ever have to split my attention. I don't ever want to be pregnant with someone other than my little girl. That's so sweet.
That's so sweet.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Esther.
I love that email because it sort of feels like something I would have written, where it's like passionate with a little bit of humor and like maybe a little self-deprecating humor. With that little guy.
Yeah.
Like, it was so hard. I don't want to do it again. And that's totally fine. I appreciate you, Esther. I appreciate your candidness. So thank you.
I think you also enjoy the email because at the bottom, what does it say?
No.
It says, Jess, I just want to say you have the cutest laugh.
Stop. I don't know. Well, anyway, thank you, Esther. I bet you have a cute laugh too. It's really fun getting these emails. It feels like I've just made a brand new friend. So, thank you.
That really fits the theme of this episode. Just the extreme paranoia, the anxiety, you're a mess. And that sucks.
Yeah.
That really sucks. And if you don't want to do it again, I think
don't.
Yeah, don't. I think you have every right to be one and done.
Yeah. Not to get too heavy, but I remember once telling my therapist a few months after we had left the NICU, maybe 2 months, I sat there and I told her, I left the NICU and brought Penny home, but sometimes it feels like I'm still there. It still feels like I'm wandering the halls waiting for someone to tell me something's wrong, waiting for the other shoe to drop, as they say. And it's true. Like, just because you're home with your newborn doesn't mean suddenly you're good. Everything's fine.
I got this.
It's like you don't have that safety net of the nurses anymore, and you're just sort of like meant to go it alone.
I think maybe some of our listeners could probably relate to this. When we were in the NICU, you would think we couldn't wait to get out of there and get home. But the reality is you kind of feel safe there. You don't really want to leave. It's like they're taking the training wheels off.
Yeah.
But when you're there, you have a nurse coming every 10 minutes or something. And yeah, it was a huge reality check when we finally left.
Yeah. And then for our situation, we actually had to go back.
Right.
Penny had a really low temperature one day, so we had to go back to the NICU. And it was, again, like my anxiety being proven right.
Yeah.
Like, once you've been proven right and you're like, oh, I've been an anxious person all this time, because the world is fucking scary. And then life is like, correct. Life
Mhm.
is scary. Here's a horrible thing that can happen and it's happening to you. Welcome.
Yeah.
It makes you a more anxious person. It makes you less trustful of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot harder to find your stride as a parent after that. And it was hard for me.
Yeah. Imagine us being as anxious as we were the first time we left. Something goes wrong. We're back in the hospital. I never wanted to leave.
Yeah.
I never wanted to leave.
Absolutely. And we had gotten to know the nurses too. So they felt like our friends and our family, especially since, we didn't have that really typical show everybody the baby, take this tiny baby around. Yeah. We were wearing masks before it was cool.
Yeah.
Way before it was cool. And we were using hand sanitizer way before it was cool. But that kind of leads me into our next email. This next email is from Kristen. Do you want to read that or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. This email is from Kristen. She says, "Good morning. We are a family of 3 just like you. My husband and I are 30 and 32, and our daughter is 18 months old. We are one and done by choice and have gotten a lot of slack for choosing to only have one. Neither my husband nor I are onlys, and we always thought we'd have 2. However, I had a pretty rough experience when we tried to start our family. I had a miscarriage, then a complicated pregnancy that gave us our beautiful daughter. I actually wrote about it in a blog I just started because I've been trying to cope and heal from all the trauma and have found writing really helps a lot."
I want to just come in really quick and say I'll try to reach out to her and see if she wants me to link her blog in the show notes. And if she does, cool. I'll throw it down there.
So my rough pregnancy turned into a traumatic birth, and our daughter ended up in the NICU and had health issues. She came home on oxygen for 6 months, and it took over a year to resolve all of her health issues. Wow. I'm so sorry, Kristen.
Yeah, that's hard.
Now she is, it gets better. Good. Now she is a happy, healthy, and all-around amazing 18-month-old. That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
It's taken some time for us to decide, but ultimately, we thought it was best for me mentally not to have another. I literally don't think I could handle it. My pediatrician recommended we read One and Only by Laura Sandler, and we both did, and it's helped so much.
Yeah, I'll link to that in the show notes too. Thank you.
Perfect. It helped give me the tools to respond to people who bash me for being one and done, and when they throw these stats like they're lonely, selfish, brats, etc., I can debunk those. That's so cool. Good for you.
Yeah, way to empower yourself with the straight facts, because it's really easy for people to tell you that they know more than a subject about you, but you can just go right back at them and say, I've actually done the research, thanks.
Yeah. So thank you, Kristen. That was a wonderful email.
Yeah, that really was. And hopefully from all the stuff we just shared, you can sort of find a little bit of comfort in the fact that we're here. There are a lot of other parents just like you who had kind of a rocky start, and because of that don't want to do it again. And it's a completely valid option.
It really just kind of gets me anxious thinking about having another,
Yeah. There are no guarantees in life. There are no guarantees
that a gamble.
It's going to be an easy pregnancy, labor, delivery. There's no guarantees that the pregnancy is going to, carry to term.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to talk about, how does your child react to the state of your mental health? How does that affect them?
Yeah, that's something I hadn't even really considered. You're kind of taking your other kid on that journey with you.
Right.
If you choose to have another baby.
Whatever mental health issues you're dealing with, whatever it may be, you're going to potentially have to deal with that in addition to raising a child. And I can't even fathom that. That sounds incredibly challenging. Yeah,
that's really tough. I hadn't considered that. Like, I was going through so much stress and anxiety during my pregnancy, and you know how babies are sponges, kids are sponges. Right. They pick up on everything. Your kid is going to have to kind of be along for the ride with that, and they're going to have to experience all those highs and lows, and For me, when I'm feeling really anxious, I get super withdrawn and not very like sentimental or lovey-dovey. I just want to be alone. I just want to be on my phone. I just want to like tune the world out.
Yeah.
And that must be really hard to do when you have another kid or a baby.
Yeah.
You could even say that it's kind of a selfless thing to do for folks with mental health issues or who have struggled with mental health in relation to pregnancy and childbirth. You could say it's kind of a selfless act to stop there because they just want to focus all their energy on the child that they've had.
Yep.
And not kind of put the family through that sort of triggering event.
Yeah, of course, no parent wants to put their child through that. That's rough.
That's really hard. Kristen, thank you for sharing that with us. That really has opened up our eyes to a lot of things that we hadn't really thought about before.
Yep.
That's, I guess, what this podcast is all about, really. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and one last thing I think we wanted to just touch on that we haven't really brought up yet before we get into everyone's favorite segment. I wanted to just mention the anxiety and the stress and the mental health issues that come with infertility.
Yeah, that's so true. I read about that today. It's called secondary infertility stress or something, where people who have already successfully gone through IVF or some other infertility therapy have even worse sometimes stress because they feel guilty for physically not being able to give their kid a sibling.
Wow.
So even after going through all the highs and lows of IVF and everything that brings, they still have this intense pressure on themselves to try to do it all again, spend all the money, do all that emotional work, because they still have to face their own infertility when it comes to not being able to give their kid a sibling.
Yeah.
And we want to take a second to reach out to all of you. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with that. Anyone out there who is, that must be really rough.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard that infertility is a really, really difficult experience.
Yeah.
And for all you IVF folks out there, we just want to say hi.
We're here for you.
We're here for you. If you're one and done not so much by choice, this is still a podcast for you.
Yeah.
This is still us just saying, hey, let's take a negative and spin it into a positive.
Right.
Because for us, we're kind of half and half. We're by choice, not by choice.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of can see on both sides of the situation.
Yeah.
And identify with it.
Mm-hmm. But
you IVF folks out there are warriors. We appreciate everything that you all do.
We salute you. Sorry.
That actually does bring up a really interesting point about a TV show that I've seen.
Okay.
A little TV show set in the heart of Texas.
Is this a segue?
This is the pop culture segment.
Wow, that sure is spooky. What happened to your voice?
Pop culture.
Pop culture. I turned it off.
Oh, okay. It's okay. So this is the pop culture segment where we talk about TV show, movie, piece of media that features an only child. And we talk about how the only child is stereotyped. Or in this one, we talk actually a little bit more about how the parents of the only child are stereotyped.
Right. So
we watched King of the Hill.
Never heard of it.
Yes, you have. It's a great show. It's one of my favorites growing up. I like the super, super dry comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I like the characters. There's actually a pretty good amount of only children in this show, too. And what I'm finding is that in TV shows, I think they write only children characters simply because it's easier. You can have a wider range of characters and not have to explore their family dynamics. So you can have 3 neighbor kids who all only really deal with each other because it's just a lot simpler for them not to have siblings.
Once you start introducing siblings, and it just gets all messy.
It does. So in this show, we have Bobby Hill, only child.
Bobby Hill.
Luann, I don't remember her last name off the top of my head. It's Peggy's maiden name. Oh, shoot, that's going to bother me. Somebody write in and tell me. So Luann is also an only child. She's Bobby's cousin. And then their neighbor Connie, she's an only
Connie,
child.
she's an only child.
Joseph, their other neighbor, he's an only child. So there's actually a lot in the show. And like I said, I think it's just for brevity. I don't think it's really making a statement in this
Right.
particular show. We watched an episode that is about,
What was it called?
I don't know.
Next of Shin.
That's right. Next of Shin.
Next of Shin.
Because Hank's dad is missing his shins from the war. Cotton, yeah. So this episode is about Hank and Peggy randomly. Like, the show is somewhat episodic, so I don't know if the last episode they had some kind of interaction with a baby, but it seems like to me randomly they're trying for a baby.
Yeah.
And the show opens with them taking their 12th pregnancy test. And she has them all in this like baby book. It's really sad.
Yeah.
So you can tell that they've been trying for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And Pierce picked up on Peggy saying, "I've been sitting on these eggs for 40 years." So she's 40.
She's 40.
Yeah. And they don't say why they waited, 11 years between their first and second
With
kid.
Bobby,
Like
yeah.
I said, maybe we missed the episode before. But
Right.
it kind of just goes into how Hank deals with, getting help.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't take it very well.
Yeah, Peggy wants him to go, to a fertility clinic and do a sperm sample. If you've ever seen King of the Hill, you probably know how Hank reacts to that.
Yeah, she said, he'll go to the doctor, but he said he won't take his pants off for any doctor. And then and then their next door neighbor lady, who's a weather person, says he can just use an MRI. It's the same technology they use at the Weather Channel.
He can keep his pants on.
Yeah, it's a funny episode.
Yeah.
But there's some pretty interesting stuff in there as far as how Bobby reacts to it.
Yeah, you kind of have to, peel back the layers to kind of like dissect, the feelings and
Sure.
and the anxiety that comes with that decision.
Yeah, there's at one point him and his grandpa are sitting at a bar and he's drinking root beer and his grandpa's drinking Arlen beers or Alamo beers. And he says, "So my parents want another baby." I can't really do it.
That's pretty good.
Grandpa.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Am I not good enough for them?
Yeah.
Maybe they want to try again because I wasn't good enough."
Right.
Or something. And it's really like there's a lot of heart in that sentiment where if you're trying for another and your kid is kind of old enough and mature enough to wonder about that must be a pretty wild experience. But I don't think he ever really says it to his parents.
No, but you kind of get to see that the kids pick up on that, the stress that the parents go through trying to get pregnant, and it really affects Bobby. So he starts, kind of acting out. He thinks that he's going to have competition.
I will applaud the show a little bit for not giving in to any of the classic only child stereotypes, though.
Yeah.
He's definitely not spoiled. He's not bratty. He's very individualistic, which I think is a positive only child stereotype. He's very much himself and kind of unabashedly himself. He seems pretty comfortable in his own skin. He seems pretty comfortable chatting with adults. There's even like a running joke that he is sort of like an old man at heart. I remember there's an episode where he eats liver and onions.
Bobby?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or he is really into like, I don't know, old music or magic shows. There's a whole episode, I think, where he grows roses. Or maybe that's Hank.
Yeah. No.
Is
Yeah.
that Bobby?
Bobby gets into it. And
Yeah,
then
but
Hank,
Bobby.
Hank kind of scolds him for it, but then Hank
Right.
gets
That's right.
into
That's
it.
right. Yeah. So I think that they do a really good job showing an only child as just being sort of an interesting character and not being the butt of the only child joke,
Right.
which was really fun to watch, actually.
And to flip back to Peggy and Hank, they're really going through something here. They have this huge issue that they're dealing with. Hank catches his dad and his friends like kind of talking about him behind his back.
That's right. He starts wearing shorts to try to like air out his genitals.
To keep his genitals cooler.
Right.
And therefore raising his sperm count.
Yeah. Which I think is real. I think it being hot down there is not good. That's why they always say to like wear loose boxers and stuff. But yeah, his friends kind of make fun of him. There's a lot of stigma when it comes to talking about it. I think they sort of like equate it to a manliness thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it doesn't work, huh?
Yeah. Cotton starts really harassing Hank about it, just really grilling him. Because I don't know if we've mentioned Cotton and his wife.
Yeah.
She's pregnant.
She's pregnant also, yeah.
And so this 75-year-old man, doesn't have issues with it. And so he's just like kind of strutting his stuff in front of his son. They don't.
Cotton says, because Hank's got a narrow urethra.
Yeah.
I think I laughed out loud.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you did. So Hank and Peggy are really struggling. Towards the end of the episode, it really starts to drive a wedge between them. And, I know it's just an animated show. It's supposed to be funny and everything, but that's real.
Yeah, definitely.
That is 100% real life.
Hank kind of decides he's done.
Yeah, he just gives up because of all the flack he's been getting for not being able to have another baby.
Yeah. So he's like, if you want to have another baby, go ahead, but you're doing it on your own.
Right.
And that must be really hard. I mean, I know it's not that deep. I know it's King of the Hill.
King of the Hill, yeah.
But I don't know. For us, we thought it related pretty well, actually, to this concept of anxiety with pregnancy, because folks who don't know if they're going to have a very easy time becoming pregnant or how pregnancy is going to be or just the whole concept. And then there's not a ton of support from the people around them, especially when it comes to men.
Yeah.
I think that's something that should be mentioned too, is that mental health, it's definitely coming around. People are talking about it more, but it's still more stigmatized for men.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when it comes to postpartum.
Yeah.
And we just want to give a shout out to any men out there listening that we're here for you too. And it's tough. It's tough when the woman's the one who does all the work. She's the one who carries it. But it's almost equally hard for the man who just has to sit there and watch.
Yeah.
And he's so powerless. And everything is sort of out of his control. And he's watching the most important person in his whole world go through something so hard.
Yeah, and to be clear, this applies to, any partnership. The one woman gives birth, the other partner, whether it's a dad, another mom.
Yeah, that's really true.
You all deal with it the same.
The powerless or the person who's out of control in this situation, their mental health should be noticed as well.
Yeah.
And taken into account. And I think it's interesting when you use mental health as a reason for not wanting to have another child and it's sort of not taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine using your spouse's mental health as the reason.
Right.
Well, I want another one, but I don't know if my partner can really go through that again.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the feedback I would get.
Yeah.
And it's just not fair. It takes two parents. Sometimes you can do it on your own too, because more power to you out there. But it takes both of you to make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And both of your mental health are super important. I guess we're kind of not talking about King of the Hill anymore, so I'm going to close out the pop culture segment. It's no longer pop culture.
The pop culture segment is now concluded.
Goodbye. Now we're back.
Okay.
So yeah, I think this episode has been kind of cathartic for me as the host even.
Yeah.
Just to talk about this kind of thing, to remember why we're not doing this again.
Mm-hmm.
The anxiety, the NICU stuff, all that. It was definitely a common theme in our feedback. And that's really important for us. Your emails dictate what this show is going to be about. So whatever's important to you is what we want to talk about.
We genuinely really hope, this has helped someone out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
Just
is
to be able to talk about it.
This is a huge, thing to struggle with, your mental health. So, just because we covered an episode on it, please, don't stop writing in to us about it. We'd love to talk more.
Right. I remember after Penny was born, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts. And I would listen to birth stories. The Birth Hour podcast is a really good one. It's just a bunch of different people's. And The Longest Shortest Time is another really good one. I'll link to these below.
Did you find that therapeutic?
Well, I was going to say, I would listen to these podcasts, and sometimes they would talk about NICU stays or harsh deliveries or all these different things. And it's really embarrassing to admit, but I would sit there and I would kind of eagerly hope that at the end they decided to be one and done,
Yeah.
I would be like, okay, and then you're going to say that you're done now, right? And they usually wouldn't. They would usually say, with the next pregnancy, it was easier, or when we try again, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember just that desire in me to find somebody who related to me, somebody who found this experience so traumatizing that it guided their decision not to do it again. Yeah. And so I really hope that somebody else is out there going through the same thing, and this is the podcast maybe for you.
Yeah. But if you ultimately decide to have another, hey, that's great.
That is great.
That's great. Really, it's just a gamble.
Yeah.
You kind of rolling the dice here, and it's true. Just because we had a difficult pregnancy, the second one it's not guaranteed to be.
There's no guarantees.
Yeah. So
we all deserve to live the life that we choose.
Yeah.
And we do not deserve for it to be guided by stigma or societal pressure, either direction.
Yeah.
So whatever path you choose, we support you.
Yep.
You can still listen. You can see if the grass was greener or not.
Yeah. Whatever you think is going to help your mental health, we urge you to really, take that path, take that avenue.
Yeah. And another thing that we actually didn't talk about during the show, but I think maybe some of our listeners might relate to, is there is a lot going on in the world right now.
Maybe this goes without saying.
Yeah. Like COVID, like the racial inequality, like political just
whatever
mess.
Whatever part of the world you're in.
Yeah, political unrest in a general sense.
Yeah.
Also the U.S. causing a lot of it. Those are also good enough reasons to be one and done,
Sure.
or at least one and done for now. If you don't feel like you're in the headspace to become pregnant and go through all of that with everything that's going on in your life or around you, that's also a totally fine reason, because bringing a child into the world does involve a good sense of community, or, for some of us it does. It does involve going in and out of hospitals for some of us. And it involves a hope that the world's going to be okay and an okay place for this little baby. And right now, for many of us, we just don't feel that.
Right.
And so your feelings are valid. Your mental health is important. Do what feels right to you. But you have a whole community of support around you if you're ready to be done.
We hear you. We see you.
Totally. And again, we kind of want to just dedicate this episode to October being National Infant and Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month. We know that anxiety, trying after loss,
oh my gosh,
must be devastating. So we want to dedicate this episode to all of you out there. If you're struggling with that, we're here.
Yeah.
We totally are with you, and we're behind you. We want to support you, and we're really sorry. So that concludes episode 3. Like I said earlier, next episode we're going to talk a little bit about creating a community for your only child, the family you choose.
The family you choose.
Teaching your only child how to create long-lasting friendships. We kind of want to hear people's holiday traditions.
Yeah.
If you have a big group of friends over during the holidays because you don't really have a big family and you don't have a bunch of siblings and all that, let's hear about it.
Yep.
If you have a group of friends with kids that have become sort of like a type of cousins to your kid, we definitely want to hear about that.
Yeah.
We want to hear a little bit more about what it's going to be like down the road with our only child and creating a family of close friends for her.
Yeah. A family.
Yeah. Yeah. So write in at onlyyouPod@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at onlyyouPodcast. You can find us on Facebook at onlyyou, a one and done podcast. And
we'd love to hear from you.
We'd totally love to hear from you.
Seriously.
So thanks again for tuning in, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Toodaloo.